On June 20th, Variety dropped the shocking scoop that Disney's diversity officer, Latondra Newton, had exited the company, which, more often than not, is code for that she was fired. To many, this came as a shock, as she is the one ultimately in charge of Disney's various diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, which are part of the company's overall ESG commitment. That should make her a sacred cow, yet that sacred cow was seemingly just slaughtered. If so, what could that mean? On that, there is no official answer as of yet, so we are left to interpret and opine. And one who was not surprised by this is someone who has long been of the opinion that the mass firings do mean change is coming to Disney. With me to discuss his readings of the tea leaves on what this could mean is writer and producer Kamran Pasha.
Hi, Andre. Thank you so much. It's been a long time since I've been out on Midnight's Edge. I'm glad to be back, and I'm glad to be able to talk about this breaking news. It's really quite very significant.
Yeah, so tell us, what is going on?
Well, as you can see, Variety broke the news, and then the other trades have now reported on as well. That Ms. Latondra Newton, who is the chief diversity officer of Disney, is moving on to new endeavors, which, as you've indicated, is usually an indication that she's been fired. And she's a very interesting figure. She's a very controversial figure. So give her context. Ms. Newton was the woman that spearheaded all of these diversity, equity, inclusion, ESG initiatives that we have been, many people in the fandom have been very critical of. Particularly reimagining tomorrow. And I've heard a lot of people say, in videos and in the comments on Midnight's Edge and others, that I won't believe that change is coming to Disney until they start canning these Reimagine Tomorrow people. Well, guess what? The head of Reimagine Tomorrow just got canned. So maybe it's time to start noticing something. But yeah, so that's the events, and this has been building up for quite some time historically, because Ms. Newton's an interesting figure. She came out last year in the halcyon days of Bob Chapek when he was CEO. It feels like it was 10 million years ago, but it was just last year. She came out, and when Mr. Chapek attempted to get Disney out of the Florida sexual education bill and not get into a debate about it, she actually went public as the head of diversity at Disney and expressed her deep concerns that the CEO, her boss, was not making enough movement in favor of these issues she cared about. And that was quite shocking at the time. There was one other person, there's actually a couple other people that did that at the same time, and one of them was a Ms. Victoria Alonso, who was let go a few weeks ago. And now it is time for Ms. Newton herself. The day of reckoning has come for her. And I think it's very interesting and significant that her day of reckoning comes because she fought for LGBTQ issues. She herself is African American, and her exit comes the day after Juneteenth, which is the new holiday celebrating the freedom of the end of slavery in the United States. And so right the day after Juneteenth, she's let go. And in the middle of Pride Month, she's let go. So it almost feels like a little bit of a message, because this has been timed very specifically. And so it is really quite shocking. And it is very much a shot across the bow of ESG supporters.
I was about to bring that up. What do you think BlackRock is going to feel about that? Because Vanguard, who is Disney's second largest corporate owner, they are starting to leave ESG a little bit behind. The ones who still are all in on it are BlackRock, Disney's largest shareholder. They can't be happy about this.
They can't be, but the fact that it has happened speaks for itself, right? The fact, as you said, Vanguard, this number 2 largest institutional shareholder, they have publicly stated that this isn't ESG is not a productive methodology for them to invest. They stated that just a few weeks ago, and so that was quite shocking for a lot of people. BlackRock still seems to be committed to it, but the very fact, the actions are reveal themselves. The very fact that Ms. Newton was removed so unceremoniously, that's happened a lot at Disney recently. Ms. Alonso was removed unceremoniously. Bob Chapek was removed unceremoniously. Susan Arnold vanished unceremoniously. A lot of unceremonious vanishings and departures happening, which is a sign of a company in extreme crisis. And because of those crises, I don't think, and they're financial crises, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but I don't think BlackRock is in any position to cover all the holes that are in Disney's ship. And so it may be upset about it, but there's other battles to fight right now. And I believe their personal attention as a fund entity is apparently to support Ukraine right now. So that seems to be where their focus is. It's not on Disney. So
what do you think may happen after this? Is Disney going to get a new diversity and inclusion officer, or is that a role that's just not going to be refilled?
Well, right now they have someone who's currently in the company that's going to serve as the interim person for that. They may fill this role again, but I believe the role is going to go back to what the role used to be just a few years ago. I mean, I've been in this town 22 years working as a screenwriter, and the diversity people have always been there. At every studio I've met them, right? They're all very nice people, but historically, to be very frank, and I say this as a minority myself, to be very frank, that role was historically a fake job. It was there. The people in those roles, the Disney, or any other Warner Brothers, wherever it is, the inclusion officers, diversity officers, their job was to take polite meetings with people, to go to political rallies and give speeches, to go to events and give speeches about the need for diversity. That was it. It was never anything more than talk. But apparently, Ms. Newton attempted to make it more than talk. She pushed forward this Reimagine Tomorrow agenda that we all saw the videos that came out of, that she was going to reshape storytelling inside of Disney, and others like her existed in the studios. But I think we're just going to go back to the old days of people being put there for FaceTime, which is in its own way disrespectful. But Hollywood is a racist institution, and they're just going to go back to stop pretending to be that, to be more than that. They're just going to go back to tokens, which is what they do.
Speaking of, let's read from the article a little bit. It says here, upon Newton's departure, Newton's direct reports will report to Julie Merges on an interim basis until a new chief diversity officer is named. Shelby Curry and the DEI internal communications team will continue to report to internal communications and engagement executive Carrie Brown. So the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts will seemingly continue for the time being, but
Well, at least
they're
in
reporting to new people. What do you know about Julie Merges and Shelby Curry, who will be taking these things over?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think at this point it's just going to be going back to the old days of empty talk, which is what they're used to. But we should understand Ms. Newton's been, this has been long coming for her, because not only does she speak out, if you recall, many of us don't recall, but I'll remind us all. So there were two major events that happened publicly with her. So she came out last year, publicly condemned Bob Chapek, her boss, for not doing what she wanted in the Florida legal dispute situation, which is always a mistake in a company, to come out and criticize your boss. That's a mistake. Shortly thereafter, what was interesting was that there were then follow-up articles interviewing various DEI people about how Hollywood is not fighting, Governor DeSantis in Florida enough. But if you may recall, the trades attempted to interview her, and then the trades reported that Disney would not make Ms. Newton available for comment. Disney would not make Ms. Newton available for comment. So she was muzzled. After she spoke out against the CEO of Chapek, she was muzzled. They said, shut up. You can't talk to the press anymore. And the press reported that she was muzzled. And we haven't heard anything from her in a year. But in that year, a lot has happened. Bob Chapek moved on. And so she may have thought, okay, I'm safe. But then Mr. Iger comes in and essentially continues Bob Chapek's plan in a much more accelerated fashion, as we're seeing, right? With the 7,000 firings. And amongst those firings are people like Victoria Alonso, who also publicly spoke out against Bob Chapek. She is gone. If you recall, at the time when Ms. Alonso was let go, a lot of people didn't understand the significance of it, because she was such a firebrand for for particularly progressive politics inside of Marvel, and it pushed the company in a certain direction that maybe the viewers didn't want, the audience didn't want. And everyone said she was untouchable because she was a Latina, LGBTQ, loud, proud spokesman, spoke at GLAAD and condemned Chapek at GLAAD. She was untouchable, and they let her go. And at the time, some people said, well, she's been let go for X, Y, and Z reasons. Some people in the fandom said that because they didn't want to face the truth that something was happening because it went against whatever narratives they were comfortable with, that Disney was changing. And she herself then threatened to sue Disney and said, it's because you removed me from my politics. Ms. Alonso said that, right? And eventually they settled and paid her off to get lost, which was expected when they fired her. They probably had, the lawyers already had a number and ready to pay her off, and that number was given to her, and she went away. She didn't sue, right? Then after that, we've had some more shocking changes. We've had, just a few days ago, Christine McCarthy, who I like to call Kingslayer McCarthy, the CFO of Disney, who allegedly, apparently brought down Bob Chapek for as still unknown reasons, because I've heard 20 different stories since then as to why she did it. The story keeps changing. And then she herself steps down. The story was initially that it was health issues, her health issues, or her husband's health issues. And then the Wall Street Journal came out afterwards. Again, the story changed. And within 24 hours said, no, she was having some kind of conflicts with her colleagues in the C-suite of Disney. We don't know what those conflicts were. Apparently had something to do with the firings. Well, she was let go herself. And now look, within 48 hours of that, a couple of days after that, because I'm sure this happened over the weekend. We just found out about it. I don't think it just happened today. The trades got word of it today that Ms. Newton's let go. So maybe Ms. McCarthy was protecting Ms. Newton, because right after she's gone, immediately after, this seemingly untouchable person is gone too. Right?
Yeah, I also picked up on the timing of that. It seems very interesting because we do not know the reasons for McCarthy's departure. We have a narrative out there, a narrative that was challenged by the financial trades. And then so shortly afterwards, this happens. That seems, without speculating any further, that seems awfully convenient, especially when it was widely reported that McCarthy, who at one point was groomed to be the new CEO after Bob Iger, no one says anything more about that now.
Yeah, well, that's all gone.
But this was reported.
Well, so I want to speculate a little bit. You've been very gracious in letting me speculate. I still believe all of this goes down to some kind of mysterious financial issue. We know a whistleblower said several years ago that there's at least $3 billion hole that they're trying to cover up. That was several years ago. And reported that to the SEC. That was a whistleblower within finance under Ms. McCarthy. So we know that's at least public knowledge that someone claimed that. And I have long personally theorized on your channel as well that there is some kind of FTX, again, based on timing, that within a few days of FTX collapsing, Christine McCarthy, for still unknown reasons, moved against her CEO over the weekend and had Bob Chapek removed. He didn't even know what was happening, right? To this day, there's been no proper explanation of that. So I believe there's some kind of financial crisis that they're covering up. I personally believe that. I've now subsequently heard that from various sources within Disney and some subsidiary companies like Lucasfilm, who are supporting that there is a financial issue that's coming to head. And certainly their claims are being supported by the fact that the CFO has mysteriously resigned. And then here you have someone who is at the head of ESG, which has a core financial issue. It's a core financial issue. It's not just a diversity issue, as we've talked about. BlackRock and others are supporting this, right? And so to have the head of the ESG group removed unceremoniously like this within 2 to 3 days of the chief financial officer being removed, there is some kind of financial issue happening here. And I just want to share with your viewers something that happened today that is quite shocking, that gives you an example of how financially desperate Disney is. So on a screenwriter's board, if I may.
So go for it.
On a screenwriter's board today, a friend of mine who is a very, very powerful showrunner, I'd love to work with him. He's a very successful gentleman, right? And he shared with us on a screenwriter's board where screenwriters sort of talk privately. He shared with us a shocking event that happened today to him, where he got a call from his agent saying that Disney had called him because he had just worked on a Disney series that has just been canceled. You can all speculate on which one that was. There's been a few that have been canceled. That includes ABC. He worked within the Disney rubric, one of the shows that was recently canceled. And so they contacted him and said, we've been going over the books and it looks like, I'm so sorry, we overpaid you on that project. and we're demanding that you pay us back XYZ amount of money. In my 22 years in Hollywood, I've never heard that ever. I've never heard a studio demand to be paid back from a showrunner. This guy's not some low. This guy's a successful top showrunner who's made a lot of successful shows. And they're going to him hat in hand and saying, give us money back. He was shocked. And I've never heard of anything like that. And that's the kind of desperation that a company is in financially to do something like that. That's really against it's uncalled for in Hollywood. It really goes against the norms of Hollywood behavior. If you've paid someone and you claim after, it's above whatever their contract was, it's presumed to be a bonus. You work in finance, Andre. The idea of an investment bank giving someone a bit more than there was under their contract, the presumption it's a bonus, it's unusual to demand the bonus be returned. I mean, that's really inappropriate.
The only thing that I can think of there is we know that there is a disaster coming to Disney, and it's called Hulu.
Yes,
because they have an obligation to pay out Universal share of Hulu, and they are in arbitration right now about the evaluation of that, and that is something that at best is going to be like 12, 13, 14, 15 billion dollars at best. At worst, it could be triple that.
Exactly. And they don't, and we've talked to our friend Mexican Iron Man who has run the numbers. They don't have that kind of free cash flow. They just don't. They don't have that kind of liquid availability to cover that. They're going to have to do something. I have long stated my belief that some have challenged, but it is my belief, and also to me it's common sense, that the Disney is going to have to spin off some subsidiary. Some people have claimed it's too complicated to do that. I don't think it's too complicated. I'm a former lawyer. I used to work at Paul Weiss, one of the top law firms in the United States. We had a very powerful mergers and acquisitions department at Paul Weiss, right? That's what they do all day long, is to solve complicated rights issues so that companies can be sold and acquired. It's what people do. I believe that those plans, certainly my sources are telling me that there are negotiations for those kinds of things happening right now in Disney and various subsidiaries, including Lucasfilm. They're talking to potential buyers and things like that, and valuations, and accounting firms. External accounting firms have been brought in to start doing valuations and examination. And that explains, to me at least, why all of this is happening, including Ms. Newton's departure right now, because there's this Hulu situation has added pressure onto them to have a lot of financial resources, and now suddenly bringing in external accountants who don't have the let's cover it all up for the boss mentality of a corporate internal accountant, right? They're there to be objective analysts, and if they're finding problems on the books, they're going to say, look, you're going to need to cover this hole. You're going to have to find the money somehow, to the point that they're actually calling people and say, can you give us some of your money back? Calling showrunners and asking to be repaid, money that they paid them for a series. So it's bizarre behavior, but it fits into that of a company that's under extreme financial stress, so that they can no longer tolerate what Mr. Iger tolerated and promoted for a decade, and Mr. Chapek tried to fix and didn't have the time to do it. Now Mr. Iger has to fix these crises he has no time. He just has to fix them in the roughest possible way, which is what we're seeing here.
Just to round out, what do you think we'll be seeing next?
I think that we're going to see more surprising firings. I mean, Ms. McCarthy's departure was a shock. It came out of nowhere. No one saw it coming. Ms. Newton's departure is a shock. No one saw it coming. You see a pattern here, right? Ms. Alonso's firing was a shock. No one saw it coming. There's again a misunderstanding that in the fandom, I believe, where people think everything has to be telegraphed. It's not telegraphed. Things are done like this. They're internally telegraphed to the people that need to know, but when the public needs to find out, it's a shock. So I very much expect more shocking developments, things that people are saying cannot happen, will happen in the near future. And that, in my opinion, includes the revelation of negotiations and the closing of deals for possible sale of subsidiary companies of Disney, including, in my opinion, Lucasfilm, which is the least profitable division right now. Pixar is now joining it, but Marvel has some juice, but Pixar has less juice, and Lucasfilm has no juice whatsoever. And so there are people trying to sell that, and there are people saying that can't be done. I think those people are going to have to face reality in the same way they said Victoria Alonso is never going to be fired, in the same way that they said Ms. McCarthy is going to be the next CEO, in the same way they said Ms. Newton's never going to go anywhere. All of that has happened and the people that said none of that's going to happen, they will never acknowledge it, but more stuff is going to happen that they're saying cannot happen. That's what I think is about to occur. You're going to see a lot of shocking, surprising news, and that's what happens when a company is facing the crisis that Disney is facing. So don't be startled when things that seem impossible to you today, or people are saying are impossible, just appear on the news like this.
All right, it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens here. We have your predictions, and time will be the ultimate judge on what happens. Meanwhile, for those that want to follow you and your readings of the tea leaves of the industry, where can they do so?
Well, the best way is my Patreon, which is been very successful, largely because of coming on Midnight's Edge, and a lot of my followers are Midnight's Edge fans. But so Patreon / my name, which you see on the screen, Kamran Pasha, KamranPasha. We have over 350 subscribers. Doesn't sound like a lot, but 1,000 subscribers in Patreon gets you to one of the top 100 Patreons for writers. So we're getting closer to that. So come join us. It's become an incredibly lively community. It's not just me posting my opinions, my storytelling concepts, and my theories about things, and some source information from various people in Disney and other places. It's also become a lively community of people debating and arguing these things in a very respectful fashion. We've got liberals there, we've got conservatives there, we've even got a few Raylos surrounded by people that are unhappy with the current Star Wars. But they're all talking very respectfully, and I hope some people come join us and engage.
Link for that is in the description. And with that, Kamran, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Andre.